tons of energy to bring to you. So you've heard in the introduction the how I got to where I am. I'd like to extend that introduction with a little bit of why I have done what I have done and why I am doing what I am doing. And that starts back in my youth, where I was a very active member of the Boy Scouts of America. And I spent an incredible amount of time outdoors in the nature, doing things such as spending an entire weekend with nothing but the clothes on my back and a couple of matches. No food, no water, no tent, no shelter in the hot summertime. And then extending as far as spending a weekend in northern Wisconsin in temperatures at 20 degrees below zero on cross-country skis, and again with no shelter, digging holes in the snow and sleeping in a snow cave. And all of that taught me about being in harmony with Mother Nature. And it's been a theme that's carried through my life. I was very interested in Native American cultures as a youth, and particularly fascinated by the lack of waste. When an Indian tribe or a Native American tribe would kill an animal, they didn't just eat the meat. They tried to utilize every single part of the animal as a tribute to the animal's spirit and in gratitude for the animal giving up its life in order that theirs might continue. And that fascination continued into college, where studying computer engineering to be a software developer, I also had a liberal arts requirement to take, and I took that in anthropology, where I studied, again, Native American cultures first, and then African cultures. And I found that it is extremely interesting how humanity has changed over time. Early in time, when we lived simply, when we lived with the land, an inordinate amount of our time was spent simply on surviving, seeking shelter, finding food, finding water, in just incredible amounts of time. And our world has changed dramatically from there. But all of that background, all of that drove me to where I am in my profession, eliminating waste as a process improvement expert, trying to minimize the resources we consume, trying to do things as efficiently and as effectively as possible. And that has led me into this wonderful opportunity that I've been experiencing over the last 5 or 6 years with intelligent automation. So let's dive in and first talk about what is intelligent automation. Well, intelligent automation starts with at its root with RPA, or robotic process automation. And RPA uses software bots that interact with the computer just like a human does. If we take RPA and we add artificial intelligence and machine learning, now we have a bot that is an intelligent automation, and it can learn to make decisions just like a human being, and sometimes even better. We are then able to replace value-added manual tasks performed by humans with intelligent automation. And as a result, we free humans to focus on higher value tasks and to think big. So what are some of the typical benefits of intelligent automation? Well, we make our processes better. In fact, everyone who works with me will hear my famous buzz line: process improvement before automation. When I was a youth back in the 1980s, starting out as a computer guy, people would say to me, "Hey, can we put this process on the computer?" And my answer to them was, if you automate a bad process, you just increase your ability to make waste faster. So let's make our processes better. And then when we automate them, they become even better yet. That leads to a better customer experience. Customers are able to get what they need on demand. They get a consistent answer. They get their data when they need it. We eliminate repetitive work, and we'll come back to this theme several more times before we finish today. We improve our service delivery, whether that's physical delivery, whether that's virtual delivery, but we're able to deliver on a consistent basis. We're able to manage processes and even people more efficiently. We reduce costs, which is always a plus. And we're able to get more insight, and we have more time to spend on analyzing those insights and acting on those insights. And all of this leads to increased compliance and security. Very importantly, our things are scalable. And I'm sure that you've heard from several people through the day how AWS can help you scale and scale rapidly. Intelligent automation, if you think of an intelligent automation as a virtual worker or a digital worker, our ability to scale up and scale down is incredible. As an example, and we'll come back to this one, during the COVID-19 crisis, Amazon needed to hire over 1 million people in a few short months. And scaling up 1 million people took a few short months. Scaling up to 1 million digital workers takes a matter of seconds. It's very simple to do. And it is a very powerful and valuable aspect of intelligent automation. We reduce paper usage because we just really no longer need paper. We drive inventories down, and we'll take a deeper dive into that on the next slide. And all of this leads to satisfied employees. And you can look at studies, and I'm not going to cite any today, but you can find studies all over the place that say people who are engaged, people who are happy, people who are fulfilled with their jobs, strangely enough, they do better work. They're more productive. They're more valuable. So it's a great place to be around happy employees. So I'm going to talk about some back office systems that are easy targets for intelligent automation. We'll start with human resources, where we say about 30 to 70% of activities in a typical human resources organization can be handled by intelligent automation. And they include things like data entry and payroll and joiners and movers, just keeping track of where people are and what their benefits are, and recruiting people, compliance and reporting, personnel administration, performance and life cycle management. Let's dive a little deeper into that. When I talked about hiring those 1 million people in a few short months, one of the things that we do before we hire people, most employers do, is go to a third party for a background check. And that typically is a manual process. Oh, we have this file full of people. Here's the information. We're going to email that to you. You're going to run your process. You're going to email that back to us. We're going to sift through our emails. We're going to find that. And then we're going to take some other action and check off somewhere in our hiring system that this person has passed their background check. Well, at Amazon, we automated that process using intelligent automation so that the robot, the intelligent automation, the digital worker, would mine the database of incoming recruitment, automatically generate the order to have the background check done, monitor the incoming email box to the response. Once the response was received, then automatically entering the result into the recruitment system. It saved tons of money, lots of time. It freed people up to do more hiring. It allowed us to hire people faster. And why did we want to hire those people faster? Because during the early stages of the pandemic, everybody stayed at home. And to receive needed goods and services, they turned to online ordering, which led to huge spikes in our demand. And the only way we could fulfill that was bringing more people in to fulfill those orders. Next, we're going to talk about supply chain. This is one to pay a lot of attention to. And I want you to think of supply chain in a holistic sense. Every finished good or service that we provide starts with something that comes from the earth itself. We take those raw materials, we transform them into a physical product, or if we're talking virtual delivery, we are using an infrastructure that is built from raw components that come from the earth. So managing supply chain with intelligent automation is a huge opportunity to reduce waste, to reduce waste in several ways. And let's talk through a few of those. First of all, we're talking about inventory management. That kind of sounds like a whole hum thing. Know where your stuff is and know when it needs to get where it needs to go. But it's a lot deeper than that. Inventory is, in the world of process improvement, one of the classic wastes. Inventory takes up space, time, and money and delivers no value sitting in a warehouse. It only delivers value when it is delivered to the customer, when the customer consumes it, whether that's a physical consumption or a virtual consumption. So reducing inventory reduces waste, but it doesn't just reduce waste in that classic sense. What happens to something sitting in a warehouse? Unless it happens to be a fine wine, nothing good. Inventory ages, inventory spoils. Managing inventory is a huge way to reduce waste. Now, I've been with AWS just shy of 6 months, so I'm going to share a story from my previous employer, Quest Diagnostics. And Quest Diagnostics is a provider of diagnostic testing services for the healthcare industry. When the pandemic hit, we had to go from producing or performing 0 COVID tests a day to over 300,000 a day in a few short months. And our inventory to do that was extremely difficult. The chemicals that we use to run the physical test, they're expensive, and most of those are not very earth friendly. So utilizing those resources to the maximum extent is extremely important, not only to reduce climate change by reducing the amount of chemicals that are wasted, but also to make sure we have the capacity to provide those testing services to people as fast as possible so that they can make the appropriate decisions for their personal care, so that they can quarantine to help the spread of the virus. And what we did was we had an intelligent automation that would look at the inventory spread through our regional laboratories across the United States of America. And when we were running low on a reagent in California, we would look at the other regions, and we might find in the Dallas area, we had enough reagent on hand that we were projecting we would have to dispose of some of that as waste as it expired. So instead of California ordering new reagent, we shipped it from Dallas to California, and we're able to fulfill both labs' needs and reduce that amount of waste. Demand and supply planning, that's tied into that inventory management, right? So if we are able to do a better job as an end item manufacturer of predicting our demand and our supply needs, that allows our suppliers to reduce their inventory, and we get the same impact. Invoice and contract management, this is a huge reduction in paper. And I want you to think about this at scale. And when I talk about scale, I'm going to talk about Amazon scale. Did you know that Amazon delivers 1.6 million packages worldwide every single day? Now, that's scale. And when you reduce a piece of paper across 1.6 million things a day, that adds up to a significant number of trees in a very short time. The others we list up here, work order management, returns processing, freight management, these all start to run into things that are talking about fossil fuel usage now, right? We want to be more efficient with how we move things around. We want to reduce the number of miles driven. That reduces the consumption of fossil fuels. It also reduces the emission of greenhouse gases. Next up is IT services. This is a section that focuses mostly on giving people back time to do the job that we hired them to do. So by automating IT services, we can eliminate the wait that most of us see when we have to dial into IT to connect to a human being. With intelligent automation, we can do simple things, password resets and unlocks, backup and restoring, database administration, email processing and distribution, maintenance and monitoring, server app and monitoring. Software development can actually be sped up by using bots. Desktop support, batch processing, all giving time back to people to do that job we hired them to do. Procure to pay. This is all about paper, invoice processing, discrepancy resolution, and supplier management. That's about paper. That's also about time. That's also about helping our suppliers manage their supply chain and their inventory. Order to cash. These are cash applications. Typically, this is a lot of accounting time. There's a lot of time doing transactions, auditing transactions, validating transactions. making sure that we are doing all the right things and everyone is getting the right amount of money. You may have seen a story that broke in the news just the other day, and I forget where it was. It was either I think it was somewhere in Europe, where a lady was supposed to receive a $1 refund check, instead received a $10 million refund check. Wow, I wonder how that happened. But if it was intelligent automation, clearly it was not intelligent enough. So with these cash applications, we can take out people that are doing mundane, repetitive tasks, doing simple accounting work, recording transactions, validating transactions. We can free them up to higher value activities. Credit management, we get kind of the same story. Order management, a lot of times has to do with eliminating a lot of paper as well. And finally, record to report. More accounting, more accounts payable, and more tax. And tax, you might think, well, how does intelligent automation help with tax? When you're dealing with when you're dealing with the global company, you're looking at tax situations across multiple countries, and then within states or regions or provinces within those countries. So the ability to be able to navigate changing tax codes, navigate forms that need to be completed, and pulling data from a global data set, segregating that into the appropriate tax geographic location, and then ensuring that those taxes are paid and paid at the right amount is a huge win. I will share another story with you, another automation story with you from my previous employer, Quest Diagnostics. We had a problem where we were paying tax on purchase orders that we shouldn't have paid tax. And when we went to the people who were in charge of that process, they said, yeah, we sample through about 10%. And we've gotten pretty good about sampling through 10%. And we think we're getting probably 60 or 70% of the tax that we're really probably due. So we put an intelligent worker on that, a digital worker on that. And we first had them just comb through and do a sample of, let's say every purchase order over the last 3 months. And what we found was that we weren't catching 60% of the times when we were overtaxed. We were catching about 5%. And so we put digital workers on the job, and they caught 100% of the cases where we were paying too much tax. It generated a huge amount of savings. So we've talked about waste. We've talked kind of roughly over how intelligent automation is good for climate change. Now let's focus on this with some specific examples. Number one, we talked about eliminating paper. And people talk about eliminating paper and they say, yeah, that saves trees and saving trees is good. But the trees are just the top of the pyramid. There are resources to harvest and transport those trees. There are resources to replant those trees. There are resources to manufacture, deliver, store, and even dispose of the paper when we're done. And when you're talking at scale, that's a huge amount of money. It is not unusual for paper-based companies to consume an inordinate amount of trees. My last employer, we did a study. Every year, we consumed enough paper that the trees that represented would have covered at safe planting distance the entire area of the Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom in Florida. And that was a very impactful way to describe the amount of waste in paper that company was experiencing. Reducing inventory. We talked about that. We're going to hit that again. Not just saving warehouse space, saving spoiled inventory. And saving warehouse space means we build fewer warehouses. Warehouse construction consumes raw materials. It consumes fossil fuels. It consumes green space and takes green space away. So reducing inventory, particularly at scale, and oh, by the way, according to a public website I looked at yesterday, it's estimated that Amazon has 38 billion, that's billion with the B, dollars of inventory. Even a small reduction is a huge amount of money. Improving logistics, the way we move things around. That's reducing fossil fuel and more, reducing electrical consumption as we move to more electric vehicles for logistics and delivery. All of these leads to the number one way that intelligent automation reduces carbon footprint. And that's by freeing people to work on higher value items. For example, finding ways to further reduce carbon footprint. Okay, I'm going to go to a video now, and I hope that the audio comes through. If not, Atija, just pop something up on the chat and I will voice over. So here we go with our first video.
Time for a quick demonstration. Suppose I'm interested in the air quality index of major cities throughout the world. And maybe I want to daily go into this website I found called IQ Air, and I want to scrape down that AQI number by city. And I want to store that for maybe 10 years. And then I want to do some analysis of AQI over time. I may want to do some correlation studies with AQI versus some other meteorological data, or I may want to do it correlated to efforts made to improve AQI. Many reasons I could do this, but for whatever reason, this is a key number that I'm very, very interested in. So I'm going to show you how we can use intelligent automation to pull these data out. So I'm going to UiPath Studio right now, which is a platform for developing automations. I'll click on table extraction. I get a wizard that comes up. I will select add data. Now it says indicate the data elements. So I come over here to this number one. Let's click on it. And it asks me if I want all the columns from the table. And I don't really think I want all the columns, but I have learned over time it's easier to say yes to all, and then I'll show you how to get to just the columns you want. So I'll hit yes, and I see all these columns that are listed out here, and we'll address those in a second. But first, there's this next button. So I have to check out this website to see if there is a next button. Sure enough, the data are spanning more than one page. So I've got this more button down here, which is a next button. So I'll come over here and say, yep, I have a next button. It's right there. And the studio in the background says, yep, I got it, figured it out. So I'm going to delete these columns over here. Followers, I know I don't want. Column 5, I know I don't want. And then I see major city, and that's the number here. And then I see major city 1, major city 2. And since they're in order, I can see major city number 1 is a little icon with the flag. Now that's not data I'm interested in. So I'll just leave it to major city number, major city 2, and the AQI number. So now that that's done, I can hit save. And I can see that I have an automation already done for me. First activity is use application browser. And you can see it's going to the IQ Air site that we had on the screen. And then I'm going to extract a data table and store it into extract data table. That's the name of a variable. Well, I do want to write that out. So I'll select the right range activity and I'll give it a workbook path name. And I'll just call this OG30 AQI.XLSX, and I'll leave it in sheet 1. Now, you may look at this and say, what is an automation that always saves it in August 30th? Well, the fact is, it's easy to add a variable portion of this name, just like you would in Visual Basic. So I could use the system variable now and draw that out and format that to OG30 or 08.30.2022, whatever I want to do. I could also do that with the sheet name. I could also make a new column for every time I put in the actual AQI number. But for purposes of this demo, I'm just going to keep it simple. So we're going to write it to that file, and we're going to call it extract data table. I'm sorry, we're going to write the variable extract data table to it, and that should do it. So let's test it out. I'll shrink down my UiPath a little bit so we can see what's going on the screen. I'm going to close a couple of things in the background. You can see that was one of my test files. So you know it works this time, right? Okay, so now I'm going to hit debug file. And that'll allow me to do some interaction as it runs through on a first time. And we can see it's doing some initialization. Now it's actually opening the website. It's got to wait until the website populates. And right now it's about to hit the continue button, the more button. And it looks like it didn't. But if you scroll down on this, you'll see that there are 90 cities listed now. And now it's going through this table and it's scraping the information for each of these 90 cities and just the columns that we desired. It takes a few seconds to do this because we haven't speed tuned it. We can speed tune automations to go way faster than a human could ever do it. And this is still copying 90 things faster than I'm sure that I could. So now we've finished the execution and it's time to check out our data. So I'm going to open up the folder where the file is. And it's on another screen. So I'm just going to scroll down over there and I'm going to pull out, open up that file, which is probably going to open on yet another screen. It did. I'm just going to drag that over here for you to see. And there we can see I've got the city number, I've got the name of the city, I've got the AQI. So there you are. Easy, easy to do automation.
Sir, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Talking to mute, one of my favorite things to do. Thank you for that. You may have heard my dog bark in the background while we were playing that video. That's why I put it on mute. Working from home has some challenges. So I'm going to give you a bit of a history lesson now. And this history lesson came about because when I was asked to do this, I thought about what the world was like when I was sitting in your seat, back when I was in college, back in the 1980s. And I'm going to draw some parallels between the day I was sitting in that seat and today. But first comes the history lesson. And we're kicking the history lesson off with a quote from Anne Sullivan. And if you don't know who Anne Sullivan is, she was the tutor for Helen Keller. And if you don't know who Helen Keller is, she was an American born in the 1800s, born deaf and blind, and lived in isolation. And Anne Sullivan found a way to communicate with her and opened up her isolation. And Anne's quote, I love this quote, every Renaissance comes to the world with a cry, the cry of the human spirit to be free. So now diving into our history lesson, I'm going to put this picture up. Does anybody out there know what this is a picture of? You can put your message, your answers in the chat. Not seeing any answers coming through. And TJ, are you seeing any? Okay, we'll give it away then. That's a picture of the Apple Macintosh, the world's first wildly successful commercial personal computer. And you say PC today, you may not even think personal computer. You say personal computer, you may not think Renaissance or revolution, but it truly was a revolution. Up until that time, and this was in 1984 when I was a rising senior in college, up until 1984, computers were the province of specialists, data scientists, people working. Nobody had a computer at home. Most people didn't think we needed a computer at home. And Apple said, we think that the computer should be personal. We think that someday everybody will have a computer. And of course, as we sit here today, everybody has more than one computer. Most of us have one for our work job. Most of us have one or two or three at home. Most of us have computers in our televisions. We have computers in our watch strapped to our wrist. We have computers on our phone. We have computers in our cars. Hopefully we continue to have that with the chip shortage, but computers are pervasive. But in 1984, they weren't. And there were two types of responses to this personal computer activity. The first came from what I call the fearful. And that started with, the computers are going to steal all of our jobs. And then they'll take over the world. And finally, we'll serve the computers. Well, it didn't take many years from 1984, probably 5 or 6, for the fearful to be kind of drowned out as people said, wow, look what computers can do for me. But back in 1984, there were a few of us who were forward-looking, and we said, how much work can I get this computer to do for me? And what can I do with the time that frees up? And so now I'm going to show you a commercial that was produced by Apple, and it first aired in 1984 during the Super Bowl. Now, remember the quote, the cry of the human spirit.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the Information Purification Directives. We have created, for the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests, obeying contradictory thoughts. Our unification of thoughts is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people. One will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
So that commercial aired exactly one time and is one of the most replayed commercials of all time. And the message there was very simple. We are in a renaissance in the way we use computing. Computing will become personal. And there's a cry of human spirit to be free. We're not even aware of the amount of mundane, repetitive work that we're doing until we had the option to have a computer do that for us. Now we're going to go flash forward to today, and deja vu, history repeats itself. So with the advent of intelligent automation using artificial intelligence and machine language, we have a renaissance again. And we have, at this time, a group of the fearful. And what are they saying? The bots are going to steal our jobs. Then the bots are going to take over the world, and then we'll serve the bots. It's so funny to me that we see the same reaction some 40 years later that we saw back in the 1980s. And the forward looking, guess what? How much work can I get that bot to do for me? And then what can I do with that free time? And strangely enough, I have another clip for you that is going to, comes from UiPath, that is similar to what we saw in 1984, but with a much more modern and intelligent spin.
Do you know why robots are here? So we are free to do the things we love. So we don't spend hours and days and weeks doing one tedious thing after another.
So we have time to think, to be creative, and pursue new ideas. What took hours now takes minutes. What was pretty accurate is now perfectly accurate.
Can you imagine what we humans can achieve if we are powered by that kind of speed and accuracy?
Robots automate display ads in Google AdWords in 3 seconds. I take 10 to 30 minutes. So what do I do with the extra time? I strategize. I write. I fine-tune audience targeting so the ad becomes more effective.
Robots update legal documents to the latest version at any point of time, so I don't have to. So I get more time to think of complex legal arguments that win.
Robots translate customer requests to English and route them accurately to me, so I can spend time offering the best response fast, rather than scramble for translations.
The truth is, this is the ultimate collaboration, robots and humans. Robots do all the boring, backroom stuff, so we don't have to. We can dream big and push ourselves to be our best versions. We can create amazing new things and keep growing our people and our customers, so that everyone progresses, everyone wins.
We started as 10 people, and now we are the fastest growing enterprise software company in history.
So let's talk about how IA improves our climate. And this is an observation from Lisa Lot Lingso, who's from Future Navigator in Denmark. And I had the pleasure of interacting with her on a webinar. And she had this most interesting insight. Now, we all talk about eliminating mundane, repetitive tasks, opening doors. She had a very different take on it. And she's talked about the automatic dishwasher. And when she brought that up, I was somewhat surprised, but intrigued. And what she said was so insightful. Back when she was young, there was an inordinate amount of time spent on simple tasks, washing dishes by hand, preparing meals. And those tasks in her culture traditionally fell on females. And they were stuck in the kitchen to take care of these tasks so that we could live day to day. Well, with the advent of the automatic dishwasher and the microwave, that freed women in her culture from this mundane, repetitive task and allowed them to enter the workforce, to work on higher value tasks. So that's very interesting. Followed on with that, she said technology is neutral. It's neither good nor bad. And she said, be intentional in your application of technology. So that's a very powerful statement that we can unpack for days on end, but let's just unpack it a level or two. We all know that there are people out there who are using automation in bad ways, to do denial of service, to do web crawling. We know that there are people using technology in good ways. And the intention of what you do will determine whether we have more good or more bad outcomes. So back to my history in 1984, 1985, just out of college, using computer technology to give people back time, to help them do their job more efficiently, to take mundane, repetitive work off their plate to allow them to focus on higher value tasks. We're at that same inflection point again. But today, the world is in your hands. It's yours now. Be intentional in the way you apply technology. Apply technology for good. Find ways to ensure that my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren are able to live the lifestyle that only you and I can create for them. Thank you for your time and attention. I have some time now for questions or comments.